Hello, everybody. It's really cool to see some folks on already. I need to say hi and get some folks in there. There's Paul. Hello, Paul. And then Scott's here. Scott, thanks very much for coming in. Scott says, hello, everyone. I hope all is well with everyone. I sure hope you enjoy short videos during the week, Bill. And that's really cool. Thanks very much, Scott, because I do a short each day, during the week while I'm building. And it's kind of cool because you see everything that I've done the night before. And sometimes it's not a lot. Sometimes it's a bunch. So it's kind of fun. So thanks very much, Scott. I really appreciate it. Eric's here. Hello, Eric. And I saw Eric yesterday. We had a Northwest Scale Modelers meeting last night. And that was really fun. Really cool stuff that Eric did too. John's here. Hello. Hi, John. How's it going? And First Last is here. Hello. How's it going? And please excuse, but I think it's Mike. Is that correct? First Last? I think that is it. Or is it Blue? I'm sorry. Anyway, but thanks very much for coming in. So today should be pretty fun, I believe. I'm going to switch something here so I can just kind of see a little bit better. I did a lot of the stuff in the trench this week and really fun. I mean, it's over here. And so I'm going to turn my top-down camera on a little bit later, and then we'll can kind of see it live, and we'll take a look at that. But I've also got some pictures like I do, and it should be a lot of fun because it was one of those things that I had planned on from the very, very first, right? So let's take a look at that real quick. So here, in the little slides I put together, I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit with this because where am I at? There we go. I just want to show you. See, I got to jump all through all this crud. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I'm just like throwing this out. But this is where we were like last week. And as you can see, and particularly this picture, I guess it's kind of hard to see. But there's this cave-in. And the cave-in is something that I'd started that or had that idea that wanted to be part of the diorama from the very start. And I just kind of thought, as you're in the trench and you're fighting, the guys across the dead man's land and no man's land and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to also figure out how to keep your trench, what you have as protection from caving in on you because of an artillery hit. And I just, it's like that added bit of stress, that added bit of something else going on. I mean, we know it's a World War I diorama, so you're like, okay, they're fighting the guys on that side. But what I'm trying to concentrate on what's happening in the trench, just like when I was doing the subterranean stuff in the diorama, I was concentrating on what was happening right there. I mean, the war is going on, but I want to have specific things so it's not like just people like this over the edge of the trench. That's just not interesting. What's interesting to me is what's happening inside that trench. So that's a lot of what I was thinking of when I was working in the trench this week. And it was totally fun. So I really enjoyed it. So I just want to look at a couple more hellos from folks. So First Last. Yes, Mike. Thanks very much, Mike. I'm sorry. I fumble. I can barely remember my own name. So, but thank you very much, Mike. It's really cool to see you. And it's Blue on Discord. See, I knew there was a connection. Thanks very much. And it's great to see you. Mark, hello, made it. Hope I can stay for the full show. Very cool, Mark. I hope so too. It was great seeing last night too. And the Affronted, I'm glad to catch us live today. Thank you very much. That's really cool for you to come in. Appreciate you being here. Paul says, Paul Funnel here. The only upside to having the flu is finally get to watch live rather than catch up. Great show, mate. Thank you so much, Paul. Earlier this week, Paul was showing me something that he did. And if I'd have thunk right, I could have asked to use an example of what he did. But he did this just beautiful, it was like a beautiful tunnel, but he did it like a European tunnel where it's like really finished off. And there's like a walkway on the side and brick and like really beautifully arched. The lighting was fantastic in it. And I got to tell you, Paul, great job on that because I love lighting because it really shows stuff. And we're going to look at kind of examples of that today. You know, I was trying to work a segue in there, I guess. But how you did it really helps, because when you're looking down something and you can control the light, splashes of light down a long hallway are fantastic. You know, it's that whole thing about trying to draw the eye into it. And I don't know if anybody remembers the show, but there's been shows that are similar where it shows this long hallway and then suddenly the lights turn on one by one and they progressively go deeper down the tunnel. So that's a really cool effect because it really draws your eye into the scene, right? Well, you can do a little bit of that without having to turn them on sequentially down the hall to draw your eye down, just by having those splashes of light, because when you recognize the first one, you recognize the next one and then the next one. And it just, you step your way right down that hallway. It's just a great effect. And you pulled it off wonderfully, because there's a very, very cool scene at the end of his tunnel where you've got the walkway on the right-hand side of the tunnel, and then you've got a guy standing on the left. So all the way down this tunnel, this very long tunnel, you see, you know, these guys that are on the right-hand side of the tunnel, and then there's one guy on the left-hand side of the tunnel all the way down there. Brilliantly done, brilliantly executed. Really, really had a fun time looking at it, Paul. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. And please, folks, if you haven't seen it, go to Facebook and look at Paul's stuff, Paul Funnel. So Funnel. Sorry, I'm going to say stuff wrong. I'm sorry. But that's very cool. Scott, be sure to like and subscribe in case you haven't. Thank you so much, Scott. I'm so clueless on this stuff. I should be saying that all the time, but I don't. But thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it. Martin is here. Hello. Cheers from Holland, everyone. Hello, Martin. How's it going? I saw some of your stuff this week. Man, you are so productive. I was thinking about that last night. I work on this stuff constantly, right? Like some people do, but I'm still on the project 6-7 months into it. Yeah, there's a little bit more to it, but man, I see folks that do this stuff so fast, and I don't know. I'm just super slow, but it's really, really cool to see folks put out just phenomenal work and so quick. I don't know if I want to go to that area, because I think I do, but then it's like, man, I really enjoy just kind of taking it slow, because I'm considering a whole bunch of stuff in the diorama that, for me, going slow helps that process. It gives me time to digest what I've done, you know, what previous things that I have done. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I really like it. So I'm sorry, I'm just blathering on. Learning free Bill, thank you. Thanks, Paul. That's really, really cool. A lot more to it. Yeah, fair point, sir. So thanks very much, everybody. I don't want to just you looking at my mug. So let's take a look at these pictures, because I think they're pretty interesting. And I hope you like them. So this is what I was looking at the beginning of the week. And I also had a tunnel that I had set up for some German guys. And so that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the German guys. So I am going to go back to the top of this thing, and we're going to get it going again. So, oh, sorry, Martin, I got to get you off of there. So I'm just like all over the place. So this is my World War I trench diorama, and I left this picture here because this is not what it looks like anymore, and I thought it was cool. On my dioramas, I have always had this black, right? I kind of do the black on the outside to show a cutaway. It's supposed to show, you just cut straight down and there's this block of earth. Well, many times during the build, I've had different folks say, it would be kind of cool if you did dirt. I know John and I had talked about it. I think Nazca online, we talked about it. Maybe even Scott, we might even talk. I'm not sure, but it was multiple times. And so this is what you're looking at right now with the black sides and stuff like that. Later on, we're going to see what I did. And I think it's pretty cool. So the World War I trench diorama, I did get another name suggestion last week, and it was pretty cool. This past week, and it was pretty cool. Wasn't quite there yet. Guys, what I'm thinking of is I kind of would like something like The Quiet, something like, okay, we're underground, and then there's this massive war going on above ground, but underground, you have to be super quiet because of other sappers can hear you. So that's one of the big things that I didn't necessarily understand about the sappers and the trenches and the tunnels in World War One. I didn't understand the listening devices, the geophones. Now I have representation of that in the diorama, so I do talk about that. But when I'm talking about a name for this thing, I kind of would like to, bring that forward, the quiet. So please think about that. I seriously need help on this. I have not figured out a name, honestly. Everything I do is I call it World War One trench diorama, but boom, that's it. And I'd really like to have a name. Now, the other good news about this is I'm starting to get a story nailed down. So let's just keep going and then I'll come back. This is about the Libben's Large Gallery Flame Projector. That's like one of the main things about this diorama. And it is, I'm sorry, I'm getting some ideas. Paul said, tread lightly, man. I like that. The quiet thing, the quietness that is necessary underground and stuff like that. I like that. And Martin, listen. Like, Martin, I really like that. I'm going to move my picture because I got this ball over my mug in the corner. So I'm sorry about that. But I like listen quite a bit, Martin, because it sounds kind of like you're talking in quiet tones. It sounds kind of like you're like, wait a minute, what was that? Listen. I like that, Martin. I like that quite a bit. So yeah, I've had previous suggestions like with fire, because the flamethrower, makes sense. But I like that. Listen is great because that quiet. Scott says silence intensified. I like that too. Because it's such an intense environment. I mean, so that's one of the things that is very attractive to me in this diorama. The fact that it is so, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the other screen so I can, we're going to come back to that. The fact that it's so, I'm sorry, trying to get through this. I just did a terrible job here. This is what I was looking for. But the fact that this thing is got so much stuff underground, the fact that, that war, that droning kind of artillery and stuff happening and all the sounds of war and stuff like that. And then you've got this fire thing that you're doing underground. And it doesn't matter what happens. You just can't express anything. So that was a good suggestion. I like that. Silence intensified. Shh, they're digging. They're digging too. I like that one, Eric. I like that. Thank you, guys. This is great because I get these bursts of, suggestions, stuff like that. And this is great. I really like it because it's getting closer. Now, the other thing I was trying to say earlier was I'm starting to get a story idea for the diorama. And that's important to me. I've talked about that many times previously, that a story or elements of a story are so important. And sometimes I get those story elements and I build that story early on. Now, this one in particular has different elements to it and stuff like that. So they're almost vignettes. They're not this linear story like I've had before, and so this is helpful. The ideas for the title, the ideas that you guys are always throwing at me because I get ideas about what to have in it all the time. The dirt thing that I alluded to before that we're going to talk about. All of that helps add not only to the diorama, but it also helps add to that story that I'm trying to come up with. And there's a very special reason for that story. And we'll talk about that. So again, I keep jumping around. But I want to go back to the start, and we're going to talk about these German figures because I had a wonderful time. These are the German figures that I worked on at the beginning of this week. I did not take pictures of me painting them as I'm going through it. But it was just, I was just concentrating so much, but I'm really happy with them. And I was really kind of apprehensive about the red piping on the uniforms. And it ended up, because there was a nice little seam and stuff, ended up being great. It worked fantastic. I'm very happy with it. This guy, I'm really happy with too. He is like a berserker, or he's just like, he's like an older sergeant that has been through it, and he's ready to go. And so he's leading. I previously had the private in front, but then I went for this guy with the two hatchets, and he's got a bunch of grenades. So if he sees something and they got to retreat, he's just immediately, he grabs a couple grenades, pops them off, and they DD in the other direction. So I had a fun time. Now, if you notice at the top of his shoulders, there's two pads there. Those two pads are from shoulder straps that, they go down to his belt in the front, but they would also go all the way back down. Because they're fixed, because you cannot see them, I did not decide to either extend them down to the bottom or put a pack on, because that's why they only go so far, because you would put a pack there. There's a pack that they wear as part of their LBE, their load bearing equipment and stuff like that. That's what we call it now. Well, when I was in, they called it that in the 80s. So I just left it. I liked the color, so I didn't want to shave it completely off, because I think that's something important to consider when you're trying to show soldiers going on like a specialized mission. So what I'm talking about here is this. If you look at these guys, they don't have their regular gear. They don't have the regular equipment that they would be issued, to go to battle. And when you get these figures in the kit, it has all this gear that you can pile on them. And that is the gear that you're taking into battle. That's like your basic loadout. That's what they called it when I was in. Your basic load. It means your weapon, everything you need to fight battle. Well, when you would go on special missions, when you would go on a patrol, when you would go and do something specific, lots of times you would strip that gear off. You don't need it. You're going in the tunnels here in this situation. And when you get down below, you don't need a pack. You don't need all this other stuff. You need your weapon. You need some lights. You need to know what you're doing. And you don't need a bunch of extraneous stuff slowing you down or making it too bulky so you couldn't move properly if you get into a situation below there. You're also basically, this is the war. You're heading towards a fight. You want to have just what you need to fight. So that's why these guys are stripped down. That is not, I don't know if it's been talked about or not talked about. I don't know. I've not seen anybody talk about it, but it's a real thing. That's what you do when you go on these special missions. So that's what I wanted to go ahead and show here. Okay. So getting these guys together, I did do some modifications. This guy had a whistle. Previously, I gave him a finger saying shush, right? This is the officer. And so he's trying to make sure everybody's just like, hey, be really, really quiet. Here is how they are in the tunnel. And to get this, I had to switch their positions. I had to move them around. I had to add lighting, because remember when I was talking earlier on about that thing that Paul did where you have that lighting going down a hallway, that lighting draws your eye in. Well, I wanted to use the same effect here. But I did something different on this one. I went down, and to show that it just kept going, there's a corner. I haven't done that yet. It was really cool. So that's what we're looking at now. So this is the front of it. I've got the sergeant, the kind of the guy that's out in front. And then this is what it looks like in the tunnel. Now, why did I build it like this? Number one, it's much easier to work on the figures and all that kind of stuff with all of the shoring inside the tunnel attached to the ceiling. So that's what you're looking at in the background. And then it also allowed me to remove it to reposition these figures along this tunnel where exactly they're going to be to get the best view of them, but also to give this vision of depth. The other thing that was really important was the lighting. In this picture, if you look far to the right, you don't see the one light, but that one light right at the bottom of the shot on the right-hand side there, that is like the entrance light. I didn't have that in before, and you couldn't see the guy right at the entrance. So that goes over that guy right there. Hey, I got a couple more folks that I want to say hi to, and a friend is in here that I haven't seen forever. So let's get back in there real quick. I've been riffing on All Quiet on the Western Front. I've heard that before, Mark. I don't know if that's an old quote or something like that, but yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front. That sounds very familiar. Very cool, Mark. Go For It Painting says hello. Hello. Thanks very much, Go For It Painting. Great to see you in here, Mark. The fire down below. Yeah, I think we've had that one before, and I do like it. I do like it. Scott McLeod said, what was that? I'm not sure. I missed it, Scott. Super cool Sasquatch. Alan, a friend of mine. Thanks very much for saying hi, Alan. It's great to see you. I haven't seen Alan in a few years, but we used to work together, and I love Alan. He's a great guy. Thanks very much for coming in, Alan. Hey, Nazca, if you keep that diorama as a modular build, how do you avoid seams between the ground and sides? That's a big deal, and we're going to see it. I really can't, but I can kind of mask it. It's one of those things, Nazca, that I think that I need to, I'm just hoping people can get beyond it, because I did try some stuff this week, and we're going to look at that later on today. But I tried some stuff to make that work so you couldn't see it, but you can still see the seams. And I still have my facade around it. So I think it looks pretty good. So we'll take a look at it. And great. Thanks very much for coming in, Nazca. Nazca and I talk all the time. Nazca will come in and we'll talk about different stuff. He'll text me this or that, and it's like, oh man, I totally forgot that or something. So folks, when you're seeing my videos and stuff like that, maybe you're assuming I have all this figured out. I don't. I just don't. I'm trying. And I got a lot of ideas, but just like Nazca did earlier this week and another gentleman, Adam, there's ideas. Like you could do this, you could go there, or what about uniforms? That was a big one this week. We were talking about uniforms, and there's a really good reason why they mentioned it and stuff like that. So if you're looking at this and you watch my videos or even my shorts and you go, hey, what about, throw it out there. I love it. I think it's absolutely great. I've talked about trying to credit everybody, on this, because everybody's helped. So it's going to have to be the community or something. I don't know. But, I really appreciate it and I want you to do it. But there's just so many great ideas that have gone in here from so many people. A lot of them are on here today, but others too. So thanks very much. I really appreciate that. And let's see. I'm sorry. If you keep, yeah, I got that. And then Go For It Painting. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you very much, Go For It Painting. I appreciate that. Mark says, All Quiet on the Western Front is World War I anti-war book. It's made. Oh, yeah. I was trying to be silly. I do know the book and have seen stuff. I don't think I've ever read the book, honestly, but I do remember seeing the original and the remakes and stuff like that. The original is great because it's black and white. And there's something about that. There's something about seeing it in black and white and realizing, because it was made in the 30s, maybe, because I think it was made before World War II. But yeah, it's a wonderful movie. Again, I should probably read the book, but yeah, great stuff. And I did know Mark. I was just joking. Scott says, what was that name for your diorama? Yeah, we're looking for it, Scott. I don't have one yet, but we are trying. So if you have suggestions, please do. As long as it's not glaringly obvious, then I'm sure we can look past the seams. Thank you very much, Nazca. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, part of it is I'm trying to get a specific story across, and I was saying that a little bit earlier. And in trying to do that, I'm hoping that that is interesting enough to literally shy you away from seeing like stuff that I can't really do so much about. What I don't want to do is like use plasters and stuff like that and glues, because I still want it modular. I proved that this week to myself again because of what kind of work I did on it. And it's really a great method, and allowed me to do a lot of work that honestly, I didn't know the type of work I would have to do this week in working on the trench. But if I didn't have the modular ability to take it apart and work on it, oh my gosh, I would have gotten it done. I don't think it would have looked as nice as I'm happy to say I think it looks. So, I mean, you be the judge of that if you'd like, but yeah, I think it came out great. But yeah, Scott says, oh, I gotcha. Sorry, Scott, I wasn't understanding. So what was that? Yes, I do think that's a good one. And it's like the listen one. I like that. That quietness, that, oh my gosh, what was that? Or listen, something that stuff is great. I really do like those ideas. So please keep them coming. One of those is going to be the name of this diorama. Good deal. That was another. I got it, Scott. Thank you very much. All quiet is devastating powerful, especially as an end quote. Yeah, it really is. It really is. The end of, again, I haven't read the book, but the ends of the movies, I mean, you're not going, wow, that was a great movie. You're just kind of, you're sitting back and you're trying to process stuff like that. And I love movies like that because they do make you think, and they do give you things that you didn't maybe go into that experience previously. It's educating you. It's giving you ideas. It's making you think. And I love things like that. One of my favorite movies was The Dead Zone years ago, in the 80s. Christopher Walken, and he is in a car wreck and in a coma, and then he comes up and he could foretell things. He could see the future when he touches people's hands. That was a wonderful movie, and Christopher Walken, again, wonderful actor. But my goodness, what it proposes and what it allows you to think, it was really great. It's A Space Odyssey or 2001, all that kind of stuff. Those are the movies that I grew up with. They were very inducing. They wanted you to think. They wanted you to kind of think, well, maybe this is what we know, but what about this? And I love that idea. I like to do that in my dioramas. So yeah, thanks very much, folks. Nazca, if you are into reading the book, it's very good. For my favorites, and the reboot film All Quiet the Western Front is very good. The trenches are incredibly detailed and a good inspiration. Yeah, and I thought the same. I looking at that, Gallipoli was another one in the 80s that was really important in kind of forming my views and stuff. That's why Anzacs are so important. I wanted to use them quite a bit. But those movies, to me, and that was a subject this week, as a matter of fact, when I was listening to the Plastic Posse, that was one of their subjects. The silver screen. What kind of inspiration or what movies maybe helped you in building they were mostly talking about models, but for me, the building of a diorama is a lot of times based on movies and things that I've seen, and very impressionable movies that really made you think. So I think that is a wonderful thing, taking something that you enjoy, first off, movies or whatever, reading, and then trying to express your thoughts on that subject in a diorama, in a model, in whatever you're creating. Maybe it's writing. I love that, because it's not plagiarism. What it is you're inspired to do something based on that, and it's yours. It's not taken from somebody else. It is you expressing how you feel about something. And that's what I'm trying to do with my dioramas too. So that's really good stuff. Martin, TJE character. I don't know what that is. The character? Were you trying to say the? Please clarify that one, Martin, and I'd love to answer it for you because I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there. But Thank you very much. So, back to these here slides. Sorry. So, our German guys are going through there, and the thing about this was I wanted to have that depth, and I tried to kind of stagger them, so you could see them in the depth of it, and I found it very hard. It's a tight tunnel, but I think I achieved it. So doing that meant that I had to light it very specifically. I first had just the light in the middle there. Well, it's not the middle, but the one to the right. It's a little bit further into the tunnel because I wanted you kind of drawn in the tunnel. But what I noticed was you couldn't see into the tunnel really. There was nothing to grab your attention to get you to get down there to look into the tunnel. So I added the light right at the entrance. And then I did this. Around the corner, I've got a small cluster of 3 LEDs just literally hanging down. We are again looking at the roof upside down. So we're looking down what would be the ceiling. And what I did then was I put some mirror on that corner to try to, whoa, I just went bonkers. I put mirror on that corner so that I could try to force some of that light down or like into the corner. So I have some backlight. I needed some more backlight. And instead of just piling a bunch of LEDs in there, I didn't think it would work well. This mirror just worked really well. There you can see there. Now, what that did then is the front light gave us the hook. You see this guy down there. That's going to get you to look down a little bit. And then you see the other light and you see this guy. He's looking up. He's saying shush, to the guys. Then you kind of catch a glimpse of the guy in the back because of that backlighting. And then you can see this guy. This is the private. This is the soldier. He doesn't know what's going on. This guy looks virtually terrified of what's going on. And that's what I was trying for. I originally had him in the front, but I switched him to the rear, and I think the effect is good. The lighting helps, draw your eye in to see it. Now, here's the other thing. These spaces are so small. The space that I'm looking into is about that wide. I didn't expect this. It's hard to see in there. You got to look with one eye. You're looking down there, and I'm trying to see. I can't see anything, so I got to look with one eye. It's kind of cool. It helps the effect. I don't know. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. And the lighting, and I mentioned this previously on previous live streams, stuff like that. The lighting is different color. It's a different temperature. It's bluish, right? I really wanted to do that. And that is specifically from one of my very favorite movies, which is The Hunt for Red October. And in that movie, in the making of that movie, inside of the submarines, they wanted to make it very, very clear that you're looking at this or that. You want to see the color palette. That's the Americans. This color palette, all of the lighting in that's the Russians. And it's funny because they switched it. So in you might think, because Russia in the US is known reddish, that's like their national color is red. So you think maybe the red is on the Russian sub, but it's not. In the Russian sub, in that particular movie, the color palette was blue and chrome and high tech and stuff like that. Whereas the American submarine in that movie was red. So they had typically red lights on. And it was great because as you look at it, you immediately know when you're looking at the Russian submarine, just because of the color, or they switch the scene real quick and it's a shot of the American submarine. And because they do that back and forth, because in the movie, the two subs are, kind of going at each other. It's a very great effect. And I'm trying to do that exact same effect by the color of lighting I'm doing for the Germans. So that is just one of the things I wanted to mention. It's just one of the things that I try to incorporate, not really a special effect, but a lighting effect to give a very specific result, which is recognizing that these are Germans and there's only that blue light used in the Germans thing. Now, the fact is I did use one blue light in another place, but it was almost a mistake and I just didn't change it. So, but the rest of the lights are like amber and that kind of color for the entire diorama, except for the Germans tunnel. That's kind of a bluish. color. So I like it. Martin says the character goes through hell, so to speak, but in the grand scheme of things, all was quiet on the Western Front. A very cynical and sobering headline in the newspapers. Wow. Yeah, very cool, Martin. And I think it is one of those books that I want to go back and read. I was not a very studious student. And so I didn't read a lot of the stuff that I was supposed to read. I did read a lot, but it was stuff I wanted to read. But now, as I get older, I'm like, man, I want to go back and read that. And that's probably one that I want to do. Thanks very much. Restaurant quality. Hey, Bill, Evan here. Looks great. Hey, how's it going, Evan? I haven't seen you in forever. Evan is one of our patrons, one of our top patrons. And so it's really great to see you. Wonderful. Paul says, I think if your scene wasn't built modular to get the levels of detail plus the alterations that always arise would be virtually impossible. So any joints are small price to pay, I feel. Yeah, and thanks, Paul. And I agree with that. You know, that's kind of my reasoning too. I think that if you're able to pull it off well enough, the seam is not that big a deal. Now, there are areas that I just didn't like where stuff's not joining right. And yeah, I'll go back in and do those. When I did one of the next things we're going to look at, which is the duckboards and the mud that I used to put those duckboards in the bottom of it, I used mud to try to close some of those areas, and it worked great, but it's not really something that I can do like in the vertical shaft. That vertical shaft, yeah, I mean, okay, so there is a way to do it. There is a way to do it. In the examples that I use, some of the diagramming and stuff, they show like a sleeve, a steel sleeve that was fit to the top of the tunnel, the vertical shaft that went down to the tunnels. And I for a long time, I thought, am I going to do that? And I said, no, I'm not. So at the top of my vertical shaft of the diorama where they go down into the tunnels, that's just all wood, which is fine. But they did also utilize a steel sheathing on the inside. And then below that, they would use wood. That could do it for just that specific area where you do see a bunch of those seams from the different levels that I've used. Because there's like 6 levels or 6 pieces of the styrofoam. So that could do it, but it would be it would change what I'm trying to do, I guess, is the biggest thing that I would say no to doing that. But it's a great way to do it. So, you know, and historically accurate too, because I that was one of the other things that came up this week. You know, hey, are your things historically accurate? No, they're not. Absolutely not. It's fantasy. What I'm building is a total fantasy. It is absolutely based on fact. The Livens large gallery flame projector actually did what I'm proposing that it did here. The Anzacs did, help with tunneling. They were not the only tunnelers. You know, they weren't just the only specialists. There were thousands and thousands of British and even Irish and Scottish miners. Miners all over the UK came in and were doing that. My story, though, is focused on the Anzacs. So, okay, I am just like talking, and it can't be good. So let's look more at these here pictures, and let's see what we got next. This is the lighting. So the lighting is so simple. This is one of the things that I get from folks that ask, and Paul, maybe you can talk to this if you're still here. Yeah, I think maybe you are. It's very intimidating to do lighting if you haven't done lighting. It's something that a lot of people have asked me about, and a lot of people have said, oh gosh, I don't know, or I'm just starting it. And once you do it, you're like, man, it is a lot simpler. I would encourage you to look at it. I would encourage you to get interested in that, because the effects that you're able to achieve with lighting in a diorama, even in a surface diorama, I think there's definitely a place for lighting. It's not as, I think it's easier to do it underground and stuff, because you can control the outside light and use the lighting in there. But it's just one of those things. It's so simple. And routing cables is one of the things, that I've heard people say. It's like, I don't know where the cables would go, or it would mess up my design or something like that. Well, it's not too bad. So here, this is an area that you're not going to see. All I've literally done is cut a channel. There are 5 lights right there. That's what you're looking at. There's one at the front, one in the middle, and then there's 3 grouped together at the rear. I got 2 wires coming off of it. It's wired for 12 volts. Man, it is pretty darn simple. And what it can allow you to achieve, I think the benefits well outweigh any fear that you might have in messing something up. I mean, the other thing I sometimes forget is I'm talking to builders, right? A lot of you are builders. A lot of you have these skills. It's just that you maybe haven't applied them in the ways that I'm applying them yet. So go for it. If you have questions, just like Nazca, just like Eric, just like all the guys that I get a joy to speak throughout the week, they just text me and say, hey, how do you, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Just do it like this. And if I don't know, number one, I'm interested. If it's a technique that I haven't done, I'll help you look it up. Maybe it's a term I understand, or maybe I know something about it. So really go for it, get into it. I think lighting is such a wonderful thing, and it's so simple. Gosh, yeah. And if you thought about it before and you put it off and then you get into it, you're most likely going to say, yeah, I should have just done it earlier. That's all there is to it. There is a learning curve. There is a ramp up. There is things to learn. There are important lessons that you have to go through in doing it. I've been doing it for a number of years now. This is not just something I picked up in a month or 2 ago. But you can't get there until you start. So, gosh, please do it. And Paul, thank you so much for doing it, because it came out flipping great. So I really like it. Okay, so where I'm at, I don't know. We're going to go look at these pictures some more. Duckboards. The duckboards were totally fun. So there's our diorama again. This is what I was like forwarding to, at the beginning of our live stream and all that kind of stuff. But this is, everything's in, but I didn't have my shoring. I didn't have any duckboards in there. The bottom was just like my basic, see the base there, the floor. That's just like my basic, what I put down just to say this is going to be dirt. It's only meant to be a base. I do multiple rounds of the Mod Podge and the sanded grout. That's the first round. Now we're going to look at the second round. So what I did was I put everything together, and I started placing the duckboards in there where I wanted them. Now I was very careful with this process, because once those go in, they're not coming out, because I'm not just gluing them down. I'm not pinning them down, something like that. I am gluing them down, and then I'm going to saturate these things with mud. That is specifically from Neil Bullard. Does everybody, if you've been on, seen maybe this before, Neil Bullard, a gentleman from the UK, fantastic diorama builder, absolutely fantastic. He did a World War I, and he's still working on it. World War I diorama. It's massive because he uses the very large scale figures. It's very expensive too. But I'm telling you, his stuff is brilliant. And I hadn't seen anybody treat the duckboards in the bottom of the trench as well as Neil had. And the big thing that I got from what he did was the mud. How basically the mud was in there, and you could only see bits or the tops of those duckboards. See, it's just one of those things. I've been doing this for years, and I'm looking at stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I just never made that connection. Neil did, and it's beautiful. And that's what I'm trying to do with my duckboards. I want my duckboards to go in there as you would walk, right? If it's too close to a wall, you're like, no, you wouldn't do that. Get it in there where you want, and then bring that mud in, and that's what you're going to see next. And man, I just love the effect. It takes a little while to get it going, but here's just gluing them down, making sure where they're going to go, blah, blah, blah. And then I started with the mud. So the mud is just Mod Podge and sanded grout. But in this instance, I do it a little bit differently. I pre-mix it. Previously, on most every other thing that I do with that, I'll put the Mod Podge down. You paint it basically where you want it, and then I'll sprinkle the sanded grout over it. I don't filter mine. I don't put it through a sieve. Typically, I want the chunks. I want the irregularities. I want what comes from just throwing the dirt down. Okay? Gives it a nice rough surface. Well, another way of doing it is to pre-mix. So you just take some of that Mod Podge, you take some of the sanded grout, you make mud. Just that simple. Consistencies will vary, and what you have to do with it, you have to realize, because it's almost like doing real grout. I'm putting it down and then I'm wiping it away. And in that process, that's what we have here. I'm putting down the sanded grout. It's pre-mixed with a little Mod Podge. It gets in kind of in between the boards and stuff like that, and then I wash it away. This is not the end. I did this a few times. But what I end up with is this. So you're just seeing those duckboards peeking through the mud. I don't want them completely covered because people are walking on them, but I want them, they've been kind of beaten down into the mud. The mud has come up to the surface of them. Like when you pat mud or something like that, the water rises. Well, the same thing is going to happen here, and that's what it is. Now, Nazca said, what about footprints? I forgot footprints because I've got this really cool footprint tool right here that I made when I did Wolfenstein. And so this is just a fun little tool, and it's just got, 2 legs on it, and I can just, like that, and then I flip it over and do that, or I can do 1, 2, 1, 2, and I can actually make somebody walk with this thing. It's a great little tool. But I totally forgot. So I do think I may be putting some mud in there because though it's late summer, I think, there can still be a rain shower going through. And one of the things that I've really seen this year that I really liked was somebody that did the footprints, and then there's water in the footprints, and it looks great. So you have a couple of puddles and some, footprints going back, forth, whatever, and then water in it. Looks so cool. I don't know if I can do it. If I can pull it off, I'll do it. But yeah, I forgot the first time through. But I think it looks great. So there's another view, another angle. The stairs. I got the stairs and stuff like that. Now you'll see a little gap to the left of the stairs there. In doing this, and I think Nazca mentioned it earlier. Being able to remove these sides after putting this mud in was going to be a difficulty unless I was very careful about it. So what I did, and here's an example of it. This is out where the vehicle is going to be on the top. I would put mud all the way up to the base of the sandbags, as you can see here. And then once it would like set up for maybe, 5 or 6 minutes, then I'd pull the top off. And what that allowed me to do is get it so it looks like it's coming right up to it, but it's not attached. It's not actually glued. So there is a little tiny seam in there, maybe some dusting or something like that, but you won't see it. So I'm hoping that's how it comes out. So this is the next part, built by farmers and accountants. So this is the shoring of the cave-in. And this is one of the favorite parts that I had starting this thing. I really, and as a matter of fact, I talked about it at the very beginning. I wanted them, they're dealing with the war, they're dealing with orders, they're dealing with all of this stuff, and then they have to deal with this cave-in. And I wanted it to be kind of a major thing. I didn't want it to be like, just a little inconvenience. I wanted it to be a major thing. And they had to do this because it's right by an entrance to the tunnels. It's right by the top of where they have this underground facility, this compound, whatever you want to call it, underground, where they're doing the development of this weapon. So it's really important that they do this. But as we all know, the soldiers in World War I were from every walk of life. So that's why I say farmers and accountants. You didn't have engineers. You didn't have, you didn't have the smart guys trying to shore this up. You had farmers and accountants working together to get this thing shored up. So that's what I built. Here is a good look at the cave inside of it. And I'm going to try to use my mouse to show you this. I don't know if it's going to work up here. Up here near the top, see this kind of bowed in area? Well, that's the artillery strike. That caused this area right in the middle to kind of partially cave in. And so they needed to shore it up from the opposite side of the trench. And so that's what this is. They're using things that are found. They're using what they have. They may have a couple of nails here and there, but they had rope. And so they're using rope as the main thing to secure all these big timbers to try to hold up that other side of the trench. It's literally just pushed against there. They're just using the compressive ability of that wood to hold it back. So then I put all that in. It's all glued in first. Then I went back in and I used some rope to bind everything up. And that binding is really holding everything in place. Then after I had everything bound and stuff like that, I went ahead and muddied it up. I did want to put mud over it. Mud's going to fall on this thing just like everything else. And that is the final result. It looks pretty scrappy. And it looks hopefully like it was done by people that didn't know what they were doing, but they knew they had to do it. And that's really the compelling thing for me. That's really what I wanted. Now, is just another look here. They also had to do underneath here, if you can see my mouse, this right here, that's just to keep stuff, dirt from coming in and burying stuff. So they're putting in holdbacks up here, just, some wood planking and stakes just to get that stuff from falling down in there. I really like it. I think it came out just the way I wanted. It is separate from the other side. It's not joined to the other side, so I can still separate it. Now this, and I got some comments, so I want to get in here. I spent ages voting lightly because I had imagined to be so difficult that I talked myself out of it. But once I actually gave it a try, it was amazingly simple and now opens a whole new level. And that's wonderful, Paul. Thank you so much. Because, I've said this before about just about a tool or a technique or a material even. When you're building something and you don't know that tool or technique or material even exists, you can't think about how to use it. You can't think about how it would enhance your diorama, your model, whatever you're building, But once you do know, it's not that it's necessarily solving a problem immediately. Sometimes it does. But once you do know that tool or technique or material, what it does, it allows you to insert that into your planning, into your thinking, your imagination, say, oh, I didn't know I could do that before. I just didn't know. Now that I know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to do everything with that. But that thing, that technique, that material, that tool, whatever, it will allow you to design around its capabilities or what it looks like. So that's why, personally, I like to learn a lot of other things that are outside of traditional diorama or model building or something like that. Woodworking, that's my background, so that's easy enough. But there's other stuff that I've learned as I started doing dioramas that have helped me immensely. Electrical, adding lights, just like Paul says here, just adding lights now opens up an idea of, wait a minute, years ago I had this idea that I wanted to do this, but it was going to be too dark, or it didn't have the ability to highlight what I wanted people to see. Now that you have this technique, lighting, you can add that and you can come up with new ideas for what you want to build. I love that aspect of learning new techniques. Sometimes it's like, man, I just need this. And then you go out and you search and you find that, and that solves that problem. That's great. But what I'm saying is you go out, you learn something completely different than you've heard anybody ever talk about for this. Maybe tinsmithing. You want to go in and you want to learn how to make jewelry. I can promise you, if you're into making jewelry, there are things that you can use with those skill sets that'll go right into diorama making. And you create something else that you might have a massive passion for that you never even knew. So experiment, look, find, search, research, and try stuff. I think it'll really enhance. That's what I try to do. And I'm hoping that comes through, that it makes my diorama a little bit better, maybe not better, but maybe unique. Because I do want it to be unique. I don't want it to look like everybody else's. That's why when I get asked who my inspirations are, I have a lot of inspirations, by the way. Or when I'm asked, whose stuff do you watch, or what other channels do you watch regularly? And I have to say, well, a lot of it's history. I love watching history stuff. I love building stuff. I like watching, how it's made, that TV show, How It's Made, where it's just all this different industrial stuff and how they make stuff. That to me is so much more valuable than just being inspired by something, because if I'm inspired by something, but I have no idea how to achieve it, then you see what I'm saying? It's not there. But when I get inspired by somebody else doing something and I'm just thinking that's the most wonderful thing I've ever seen, and I know some skills that go into making that happen, because I've been a little bit broader in what I'm looking at, then maybe I can achieve that. So you see, I don't know. That's just how I think about it. And I hope it makes sense. And I hope it's something that, will interest you, to get out there and look more. So anyway, this is something I really want to talk about, because earlier I said the story is starting to develop, and the story is starting to develop more than just disparate little events happening during the war. I want to have a way to look at this entire diorama and see the actions and results of what's been done. So that's what we're looking at now. And that is how they actually did the shoring up of that cave-in. So that's what I'm going to dive into next. And I hope you can follow this, because it's a little bit obscure. But what we have here is the top of the trench opposite the cave-in. Okay. And I can show you this live too, because I do have the top-down camera set up. So here's another picture of it. Again, if you look in the upper right a little bit there, you can see the shoring and stuff. But on top of the trench, we've got, or at top of the wall that is the trench, really, we've got all these boards, and we've got some duckboards, and we've got some other stuff set up. Here you can see some tin, some corrugated tin that's been set up. And then you can see that people have been moving on top of this toward where the shoring up happened. Do you see that? Okay. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is what they needed to do the shoring up, to physically secure this thing from collapsing in on the trench, is they had to get up on top and do some of the work there. They couldn't all do it from inside the trench, right? They had to do some of the work on top. Well, wait a minute. Where's all of our security? Were all of our securities in the trench? So what they had to do was they had to put up some cover. They had to find a way up there in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, stuff like that, where they aren't seen by the enemy. Because if they silhouette themselves, above the trench, immediately they're going to get shot. Everybody knows that. Okay. So they had to go to very special preparations to do this repair. And that's what this is, what I'm trying to show you. So along here, you have to imagine nobody was standing. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's completely dark, and they're laying on their bellies, low crawling along this path on the back of the trench. And what they're doing is they're dragging wood, and they're dragging rope, and they're trying to fix this thing. Now, the way they get up on top of that side of the trench is this ladder right here. And if you look at it on the left and the right side of that ladder on top of the trench, there's cover. And what's cover? Well, cover is what you say in the military when you are behind something. If you're a gamer, you understand that as well, you know, but if you haven't done that kind of thing, you maybe don't understand cover. Well, when you're on the battlefield and you're just standing there, you know, hi, bloop, everybody can see you, they shoot you, right? Well, cover is something you get behind. It's just a natural thing. So we needed to build cover on this side of the trench to get even out of the trench. And to do that, you're trying to find a way up there that you're not going to be seen first off, so that you can even put the other cover up that's up there. Let's go back to the picture and I'll try to explain this. So you're looking at the ladder right there. Right above it, there's no cover because you have to get up to the trench. But on the left and the right-hand side of it, there's cover that they've got there, something to get behind to hide. But they had to put it up there. Well, how did they get up there in the first place? Because as soon as they pop up there, they're going to get shot. Well, that's this. So here I am looking from behind where that cover is at the top of the trench, and look what's straight through that gap. There's a little mound. There's a little hill. So there's the cover, and then that little hill is directly across from it. And because it's directly across from it, you can get up on top of the trench and not get shot initially. Get your cover up there. Once the cover is up there, then you can do your work. And so that's the whole story of this little back trail, if you will, on top of there. It was all put there. And you notice I did that a few weeks ago, but that's all put there so that they could, you have a reasonable story that says, this is how I was able to shore this cave-in up. So again, it's just, you know, it's maybe not apparent if I didn't tell you that that's what's there. But if I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, well, they got that shoring in there, but could they do all that shoring? Because I mean, heck, it's like 12 feet above them from inside the trench. And yeah, you could do ladders and stuff like that, but it really helped to get somebody on top. So anyway, I'm probably just going on too long about that, but I really like it. I thought it lended a little realism and some practicality to getting up there and shoring that thing up. And that's what I concentrate on. That's what I want. I wanted everything in here to look, even though it's a fantasy, I want it to look real, right? I want it to look like that's what you would do. And so that's just one of those things. Okay. So I'm just talking. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. So Martin says, summers can be very wet in US and Europe. No worries. Thanks very much, Martin, because I mean, I lived in Germany for like 3.5 years. I was stationed over there, and man, sometimes it's just gorgeous. And then sometimes you get the hawk. That's what they called it in Germany when the wind would come in. And oh my gosh, you get these storms and stuff. Yeah, pretty bad. Berlin can get pretty stormy. I love the rope binding on the showing up. Looks fantastic. Thanks, John. I really liked it too. And where did I get that rope? I love this place, and I've talked about it a lot, and I've left links and all that kind of stuff. But this is, I got to read it, Siren Ship Model Company. And what they do is they make rope. They make a lot of stuff. It's for shipbuilding. But the rope they make is brilliant. It looks like rope. It is scale rope. They have all kinds of different thicknesses. I bought like 4 different ones of these, all different sizes, to get, dialed in, because I've only used it one other time. And I just love it. I didn't use the smallest rope that I had purchased, but I think I used 030 is 30 thou rope on this. And I'm going to tell you, I love that. So Siren Ship Model Company.com. And they even have a rope walk that you can buy. And it's not that expensive. And if you don't know what a rope walk is how you make rope. Obviously now it's automated, but if you've ever been to a museum or something like that, I've been to a few of them that have demonstrations about how to make rope. It's basically this whole contraption that allows you to do the proper winding in the proper direction and all that kind of stuff. And that counterbinds the rope and everything. And it makes actual rope. Well, the difference is this is bound with a real rope walk and strings are not. When you buy string or twine, looks close, but there's a lot of fuzzy stuff coming off of it. It's not consistent. Sometimes you'll have like thicker portions or thinner portions. String is not the way to go. And I use string for years in my creations and stuff, you know, that I'm doing because I love textiles. This is a textile to me. And I use that stuff and I would wax it and burn it and do all these things to get the stuff off that string. Found this guy. I'm never going to do it again. I'm just using that because it's brilliant. So it's neat. And the rope walk that you can buy is not that expensive. So you can make your own. It's a pretty detailed process, but he has videos and everything. It's really cool. So check it out if you get the chance. Nazca says, isn't fishing or guitar wire quite good for rope? I remember someone like Martin Kovac, aka Night Shift, using it in diorama. Yes, it is. It is. Because not necessarily fishing line, but like guitar strings, because guitar strings are bound. And so it kind of looks like it, but that's real rope. It's just tiny. So that looks way better than anything I've ever seen or anything I've personally used. It looks like rope. That's it. So yeah, I'm using this. Take a look at it. It's beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful stuff. And it has different colors too. You can get like dark brown, or I like the tan. To me, it looks like hemp rope, you know, just regular old timey rope. No fuzz. There is virtually no fuzz on this. And the other thing is I don't know if you've ever done it. I did it one time and did okay, but where you weave a loop into the end of a rope, a bite. I don't even know the terminology, but I know how to do it. And I did it one time. You can do that with this. You can't do that with string. Okay. Big difference. You can't do it with anything but this. Now you can do it with cable, but then you have to deal with the cable. This stuff also falls properly, meaning that it looks like gravity is holding it. You know, when you do a piece of string, a lot of times, you know, it'll stick up like that because it just doesn't have the weight. It doesn't have what it needs for gravity to look like it's affecting it properly. This does. It will loop properly. It's almost like using lead. You know, you can get some really nice loops and stuff. Brilliant stuff. Got to check them out. SirenShipModelCompany.com. First Last says, I use thick dental floss with 2 pieces wound together for rope. Decent outcome. No frays due to the wax and matching the scale. Great. And that works too. The problem that I had with wax was I couldn't paint it. The wax, you could paint it, but it doesn't really soak in. You know what I'm saying? It's rope, guys. It's just rope. So if you want rope, that's where you can find it. Martin says, guitar strings are nice and very useful, but too stiff and tight. Bends or smaller scales, in my opinion. Yeah, and I agree with you. You know, it is that tension. You know, I've got to do I've got to do 2 things in the vertical shaft. One of them is where one of the guys at the bottom of the vertical shaft is pumping water out. Very, very normal in the mines and stuff. They had hand pumps and you would have to pump water out. Just a mining operational thing. So I've got to put in a hose going up and out. The other thing that they did in a lot of these is they forced air down into the tunnels. And so I have to have a hose going down. Well, this is a little bit thicker, and that's the issue that I'm finding. I have to have the right diameter. But this is binding wire for like plants and stuff like that, you know, doing your plants and twisting it up to a stick or something like that. This stuff works pretty good. It's a little bit less springy than, like Martin was saying, with the guitar strings. You know, it'll bend and stay there, but it's still got that spring back, and that spring back right there is the killer. If it's wire, if it's you know, whatever, it can be done, and I've done it, but you're really gonna work with it. If you want to use the rope, it just loops and it's perfect. So there you go. I will stop talking about rope. I just love it. Martin says they are great for machining Krieger suits too. Yeah, very, very true. I did that. I used some expanded steel shielding, electrical shielding, and I like that better. I saw how Martin, he wound his, and they look good. They look good for that kind of thing, but I like that expanded shielding. It's like the same kind of stuff that they put like brake lines and fuel lines in a vehicle, and I think it looks great. So that's just a couple of different ways to do that. Okay, so what are we looking at? I don't even know. Let's try. That is the top, and what is next? We've got other stuff to look at. And painting the sides. So this is a biggie. Look at that. So previously, I've always had, and at the very beginning of this, I showed you that shot where the sides of this, and what I mean by the sides are this right in here. That's always been black. Now they are flat earth. I use Tamiya flat earth. And this was a suggestion. I think Nazca, I think, I think John and I might have talked about it, but it was bringing the dirt to the edges where previously I had always painted them black. And I got to tell you, folks, I really like it. It still needs something. It still needs to be painted properly and things like that. But I really like it. Again, this is Tamiya flat earth. I did, and I'm sorry. Previously, Nazca, you had asked about, what about the seams and the sides and stuff? And I said, oh, yeah, most of it's pretty good, but there's this one part. This is that one part. Look at that. Those gaps, I hate those gaps. I'm going to have to do something here. But yeah, otherwise, I think the gaps and the seams and stuff are fine. But sorry, back to this. I really do like this color. It has to be painted. I have to maybe put like some rocks in it and look like it's a cutaway, but it's soil cutaway. I had some suggestions earlier. I need to have some skeletons or bones or something like that. And I do. I think that's a very valid point. And I like to add those things. I've already got a skeleton skull in Captain Levin's office, but I think it could probably use a skeleton in some of these or bones or something like that. There will be that in here. That's like the one thing I use my 3D printer for. I have a 3D printer. It's a good one. I've had it for 3-4 years now. Got it at the beginning of COVID. No, I'm sorry. I got it before COVID. It might be 5 years old. And I like it. It works fine. What I don't like is cleaning it. I still have the old type of chemicals. I haven't done the water kind of chemicals. And it works great for making little 35th scale skeletons, which is exactly what I've done. I just got a whole bunch of them and I print them out and stuff like that because I can't make that. The other stuff that I make from scratch, I really enjoy that process. People are asking me, well, why did you just print that? Well, because I enjoy doing it like this well more than 3D printing. I think 3D printing is wonderful. And if that's your thing, awesome. I'm just not so much into it. I did CAD for years. It was only 2D CAD. I knew a little bit of 3D CAD and solids and stuff like that, but not enough to be proficient at it. But I did 2D CAD for years and worked on a computer for years. And I really don't want to do it anymore. This is what I want to do. This, building by hand, taking a raw piece of material and making it into something that has not existed before. That is awesome. I'm very much a journey type person, not an end result. If I were an end result person, this would have been done a heck of a long time ago. I am a journey person. I am enjoying the heck out of building this thing. I came to the realization this morning that I'm probably not going to finish this by the show in 2 weeks. It's not going to be finished, folks. It's just not. There is another show in April. It'll go to the February show as a work in process, but it's not going to be finished. It's just not. And the reason is I'm not where I want to be. I'm not concentrating on finishing it. I'm concentrating on getting the things in it I want in it. I want that story. I want the visual. I want you to see stuff and go, that totally makes sense being there. That's the kind of stuff that I want. I look at this thing right now, my diorama, and I'm just looking at, well, that's not there. That needs that, I'm looking at things that just simply aren't in it that I think it needs. I don't look at it much anymore and go, that looks great. That's really awesome. I really like that. I just don't. I look at it and say, man, that really needs this. That really needs that. And that's a little bit of my personality, of course. But I do like that. I do like finding something saying, oh my gosh, if I just add that, that will make it look that much cooler. So that's part of, not being so worried about finishing. So if you're a journey person, this is going to make a lot of sense. If you're a person that's just got to get that thing done, might be a little bit difficult for you to kind of follow along. I got to get back. I've got some great comments here. Cut you up, Link is here. Link says, hello, caught you Link today. Have a great weekend. Nice work. Thanks, Link. Great to see you. And then Martin says, have to go. Had a great weekend, everyone. Happy modeling and cheers from Holland. Thank you so much, Martin. And thanks for coming on. Man, it's like an hour and 15 minutes. I am just blowing it today. But thank you so much for coming by. It's been a lot of fun. And John says, I'm glad you're happy with the edge dirt treatment. I was one of the guys suggesting it. Awesome, John. Thanks. I think it makes your black wood case look cleaner, sharper, and gives more definition to your interior scenes. Thanks, John. And I agree. I do wonder if I lost, and that was one of the big things, I think you and I talked about that, losing that harsh edge, that high contrast between that black, flat black edge and then the surface. And I don't think it did. I think the facade helps that out greatly. So yeah, I do like it. And I think it's great. Cheers, Martin. John says, see ya. Paul, 3D printing is great, but you're just painting something, not making it, if that makes sense. Useful, but not essential. Yeah, I tend to agree with some of that. Now, some of these folks, and I've met and talked to a few of them who are designers, and they design in 3D and stuff like that. And again, myself doing some 3D, not 3D, but well, yeah, a little bit of 3D, but mostly 2D CAD. There's a lot to learn. And that was one of the things that I wasn't necessarily excited about. I know CAD, and so I could get in there, but I would be almost like trying to throw away what I know to learn what I don't. And sometimes that's a little bit harder. I just didn't want to buy another program. And I don't like spending my time in here on the computer. I like to spend my time in here building, creating, and having fun and stuff like that. And sometimes getting on the computer feels like work again. And this is work. This is what I do for a job, but I didn't want to feel like work. And it doesn't when I'm building. It does kind of feel like work if I'm on the computer. So Nazca says 3D printers are also good for things like stowage and AFV models when you can't sculpt or scratch build it and you don't want to pay for stowage. Jerry cans, Emma cans, wish I had one. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things because I've bought stuff from Steve Mansell, Value Gear, and his stuff is brilliant. And, you have to kind of think in those terms sometimes. Look, if I pay Steve Mansell and buy one of his things, is that going to be worth it, or am I going to make it? Well, for me, it's really simple. He can sculpt brilliantly. Yeah, it looks like everybody else's that buys his stuff. I don't care. It is so well done. I love using Value Gear details when I use those details. They're just great. And there is something to be said about consistency. And his things are very consistent. Love that stuff. In some areas, I feel, that I would enjoy building it and I could do it for cheaper and get a better result. So if I can't get a better result than 3D printing, yeah, I still might go to it, but I like the hand building, it's just a lot of fun. Okay, so let's see where we're at in these here slides, and we'll go forward. So that's what it looks like with the brown. One of the other things, Nazca talked to me about it. John talked to me about it. Lots of people talked to me about this, is the stratus lines. And since I did this, Yeah, I got to look at those Stratus lines, meaning that, and I didn't know this before seeing Beneath Hill 60. Wonderful movie about Anzac miners in World War One. If you haven't seen it, Beneath Hill 60. Love that movie. Very harsh movie. Very, boy, it's a very good movie. Anyway, dramatic. In that, I saw that soil at different lengths in France, or different lengths, in different depths in France, was different colors. And it totally makes sense, when you hear it, but I was like, I didn't know that. So that is one of the things that I do think now that I've got all this stuff in here. I'm not going to, blue, because there's that one is like full on like Prussian blue colored soil. I'm probably not going to do that, but I think I will try to vary it and primarily in that downward shaft. The other thing I want to do in that downward shaft, I told you about the water hose and the air hose that has to go down there, but a level, depth level. One of the things that I would see in mines is they just write the level, the depth on the wall. They put a board there, they paint it white, and boom, 22 feet, done. That's it. 5 meters, whatever your measurement is. That's one of the things that I saw a lot in doing some research and stuff like that. More in mining instead of this, but I think, these were miners that the soldiers came from. So they're going to bring some of that in. So that's one of the things that has to go in the vertical shaft. And I think that is something that, it's just adding that little bit of reality, that little bit more of what's real in that kind of operation. That's what I'm trying to bring in. So kind of some of that stuff is going to go in there too. All right, where are we at? Look at that. So I didn't get a chance to talk about this much throughout the week, but I really need to start the hype train on this bad boy because Model Mania is going to be this month. It is the 17th and 18th. We had a really neat meeting last night with North Scale Modelers at the Museum of Flight, and there's just going to be some really fun stuff going on there. People are going to be doing seminars. It is not a competition. That means that you can bring literally your collection of models, and that is encouraged. Now, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying you can bring every model that you have, that you ever built. If you think it's going to take more than like a table, they're like 2 by 6 feet, these like banquet tables. If you think it'll take more than that, then you probably need to contact the people that's on the flyer that you go to Northwest Scale Modelers and stuff like that and say, hey, I'm going to bring like enough to fill up 10 tables. There are people that have 10 tables. So I just want you to think about that. If you haven't done something like that, it's amazing. If you haven't traveled your models before, you're just a builder like I was for many, many years, and they're in here, you take it off of a shelf and you're like, holy cow, look at that thing. There's like that much dust on it, get that stuff down, dust it off, clean it up, pack it up, and bring them down. It's super fun because what you're doing is it's very relaxed. There's a lot of people. It's like one of the biggest shows outside of nationals, IPMS nationals in the United States. Number of models and a amount of people at this show. It's fantastic. It's in Seattle. It's at the Museum of Flight. You have, like I said last week, lots of other things that you can do at the museum other than the show, but the show is there as well. It's 2 days. If you want to attend, like I said, look at your models, see what you want to bring down. You could bring one model. If that's all you want to bring, you could do that. And I believe entry is free with a model. Look at the flyer. I think that's what it is. But I'm telling you, it's amazing. So if you get the chance, you're near Seattle, do this bad boy. It is so fun. It's my favorite model show above all. The whole competition thing, not having it there makes it so fun, relaxed, and easy. You can bring your very first model you ever bought, and that's what Jim was talking about last night. The gentleman that is the primary contact for this, Jim Bates, wonderful person. He is the Scale Canadian and online, and so he said, one of his favorite things is seeing somebody's model that they built at 6 years old, and now one that they built for like at 50 or 60. what a wonderful thing, and you can display both of those there and it is appreciated. It's not like, why did that guy bring? No, that's not that at all. It is very appreciated because these are modelers and people that love this that are going to be there. The Plastic Posse is going to be there. Eric Brubaker is going to be there. Jim Bates is going to be there. Josh is going to be there. A lot of people that have been on the show that I talk about. Rick Lawler is going to be there. Holy cow. Just amazing, amazing stuff. Seminars to see all kinds of stuff. So make that maybe a trip if you haven't thought about coming to Seattle for a while. If you are in the Seattle area and you make the trip over, it's a very enjoyable time. Eric says there were 99 modelers displayed over 2,400 models last year. 2,400 models. That's a big show, folks. And the venue, I will do it next week. I was going to show you some pictures that I took last week. I've got videos if you want to go look, that's fine. But I want to bring some pictures in because you're under this SR71, and it's not an SR71. It's like an M21 or something like that. EX, I don't know. But it looks like an SR71. It's one of the prototypical ones before the SR71 was fully developed. But you're underneath that. And it's the coolest thing ever. I absolutely love that because you're also building. So here's the coolest thing. If you are there and you are local, you can also build in the museum during the show. I mean, it's the coolest thing because you're there and you got your little kit. You can't do any painting, but you can build your kits. You can glue, you can clean parts, you can talk to people that are coming there to see the models and talk about model building. We are heavily recruiting because we want this hobby, this art form, whatever you want to call it. We want to expand it. And so that's one of the things that we're doing is we're reaching out to folks and showing them how fun it is, how expressive you can be in it, and what a wonderful craft you can do in modeling. So gosh, it's a fantastic show. And I think I said this last week, if you're there and you see me, please say hello. I am horrible with names. I know people for years and I forget their names. I'm just that way. So please, please, please come up and say hi. I would love to meet anybody that has seen my videos or the live stream, stuff like that. It'd be really fun to say hi, maybe chat for a few minutes. So that is what I got for the day, folks. And man, an hour and a half today. I mean, the longest we did was like a 2-hour one, which was nuts. But I really enjoyed this. And thank you very much for coming by. So if you have any questions, please ask real quick. You ain't got a lot of time because I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing down. But I really hope you had a good time. And, if you like this kind of thing, it will replay if you didn't catch everything. But I do it every Friday. There is one that I probably may do an abbreviated one, and that is the Friday of the load-in on the 16th of this month, 2-3 weeks out. I may not do a full live stream because that day I got to go to Seattle and load in for the show. But I will be taking videos of the show. I will try to take a bunch of pictures and stuff like that. And I think it's a lot of fun. So, and I'll start, the packing up and showing you how I do my prep and stuff for the show too, because that's always fun. I enjoy that very much. Okay. Paul, Eric, Paul says, great show, Bill. So glad I finally got to watch you live. Take care, mate. Thank you so much, Paul. And man, I hope you feel better. I hate the flu. That just sucks, man. So I hope it really, you get beyond it soon and you're back at the bench and just loving it. So that's awesome. Thanks very much for coming in, Paul. Restaurant quality, great show, Bill. Chat soon. Thanks, Evan. I really, really appreciate it. I haven't seen it for a while. I don't know if you can make it tonight, but we are doing the live group build tonight. And that is from 6 to 9. That's for my top patrons. And on the third week of the month, we do it for all patrons. So all paid patrons can go into that. And it's a lot of fun. It's mostly Miss John and I, talking about model building, but we talk about really cool stuff. So there, I'm just going to say it. Scott McLeod, thanks for the great show, Bill. Thank you so much for coming on, Scott. I really appreciate it when you're here. Scott and I talk virtually every day, and it's fun. It is a highlight to my day because I see the folks that I see every day, even if it's just a text. It's wonderful. And I appreciate it. Nazca, thank you for the great steam, but I have to go. Bye. Hey, thank you very much, Nazca. I really appreciate coming in. Now I'm getting dry. I got to get out of here quick or I'm going to start having a fit. Eric says, awesome show as always, Bill. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I am going to go before I have a big coughing fit because I can feel it. Have a wonderful weekend. See if you can get onto the bench this weekend and build something. And if you do have something that you would like me to show on the show, I love viewer mail. I love to show what you're working on. Doesn't have to be finished. And you send it to me, give me a little blip about it, and then we'll talk about it on the show. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. Have a great weekend, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful week, and I am going to do some building this weekend. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.